Hey, what's up, slackers? Since the Mario movie is on track to become one of the highest grossing animated films of all time, it's got everyone wondering, what's the next movie for Nintendo? Everyone's been looking at this fake roadmap. There's a bunch of these, but I think this one's the funniest because, like, who in the is gonna go see the Earthbound movie? We ain't even played a game. Why would we see the movie? Hell no. Obviously, with Mario making all this money, it'd be wise for Nintendo to make movies out of their other franchises, like Zelda, Kirby, and Chibi Robo. Maybe even a cinematic universe building up to a Super Smash Bros. Movie. Yeah, I bet you like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty fire, huh?
Yeah.
I bet you'd watch that a lot.
Yeah. Wait a second. I know what you're trying to do, Squidward. I'm not giving you head! Give me some time!
Well, dumb. Unfortunately, a Smash movie is never gonna happen. I'll bet my firstborn on it. There's just absolutely no way you would be able to bring in a fraction of the franchises in Smash and have a movie that made any sense. You know what though? They don't need to make a Smash Bros. Movie, because there already is one, and it's Subspace Emissary for Super Smash Bros. Brawl. People are disrespecting the GOAT Masahiro Sakurai like Subspace Emissary wasn't a miracle. Like, if you think he can barely pull off a Smash story mode, Illumination can do it, you're crazy. The amount of passion he put into Subspace gets overlooked way too much. Regardless of how you feel about this mode, the dev team went hard creating a story mode way better than it needed to be. So that's why today we're talking about why Subspace already is a great Smash Brothers movie. So let's go, and don't trip, it's just my opinion.
Oh my god, bro.
First things first, we gotta talk about the presentation, because as I stated earlier, Subspace really is filled with passion and love. You can see it in the way that characters are animated. Of course, they had to get it right since there's no dialogue. The animations really sell the relationships between the characters that meet each other and let you know what they're feeling at that moment. Sakurai made sure the characters moved and acted like they came right out of their own game, sometimes even giving us more characterization than in their own game. One of my favorite examples of this is when Diddy is dragging Fox because he's just so eager to save DK. Then later they show him dragging Falco and Fox is just going along with it like, yeah, this is what he does. Even if you didn't know these guys, this scene tells you everything you need to know about them. Or how about how Pikachu follows Samus around like a little puppy? It's cute and great stuff. I could talk about more of my favorite character moments, but I'll show you a couple instead. Also, I have to mention that Subspace is actually hilarious. I was genuinely surprised by the jokes when they happened, and they always got a good laugh out of me. Everyone knows Brawl has an amazing OST, however, you'd be surprised how sparingly they actually use the music on Subspace. Most of it is silence aside from some footsteps, grunts, and sound effects from the fighting, which sounds odd at first, but I kinda like the approach they had. Instead of playing music constantly, like how I do it, they save the music for the big moments or for references, so they'll really have an impact. Like when the music hits as Kirby uses the Dragoon, it's euphoric. Or how about when Pit's leaving Skyloft? The music is always played with a purpose. The sound effects are super cool too. Every character is using their specific sounds from their game. It's great detail. Also, I just love Bowser's evil laugh. It sends shivers down my spine every time I hear it. It's so good. Only negative is, I guess, watching it now, it kinda aged a little bit, but honestly they did the best with what they had at the time, and I think it still looks distinct enough to hold up somewhat, so the presentation is A1. Now let's talk about the story, or lack thereof. Despite Subspace obviously being from a game, just watching all the cutscenes back to back makes for a pretty entertaining movie. The story is very simple. It's the good guys versus the bad guys. How do you know who's good or bad? Just look at them. Would you trust your kids around Wario? I know when I describe it like that, it sounds bad, but I would beg to differ. Since Subspace is such an ambitious project with so many moving parts, I think it's kind of difficult to say what the actual story is. If anything, I'd say it's a bunch of really cool vignettes following several characters and groups that eventually overlap into one story. I mean, there's so many groups and squads that form that have unique dynamics and pairs I would have never thought of, like Samus and Pikachu or Diddy and Fox. To me, Subspace is all about its individual moments, and there's a lot of interesting and hype moments when you really step back and look below the surface. Like, you could put this on for a kid and say, look, they made a Smash movie, and they wouldn't think twice about it. Obviously, if you're just watching as opposed to playing, some context is lost, and it can get a bit jumpy between scenes, but for the most part, I think it actually flows together pretty well. Oh, but I hear you say, slackers, Subspace makes no sense. Which, yeah, it kinda doesn't make sense why these characters are all here or why the world is the way it is, but I really don't think it matters. It's a series of fun set pieces and moments that I think come together to tell an overlapping story. Like, come on, you really finna tell me as a kid you just had to know why Mario and Kirby are fighting in the beginning? Who cares? Real recognize real, and what's understood don't need to be explained. Despite that, I still think there are some story moments that are well developed and have some great payoff, even with the lack of dialogue or establishing anything. Since a lot of these characters we already know and are familiar with, Subspace just uses what we already know about the characters to drive the story. Like, why is Snake hiding on Meta Knight's ship? I don't know, he's a secret agent, it's what he does. Or why are DK and Diddy chasing the Koopa and Goomba who stole their bananas? Because they're monkeys. They're like bananas. Even the villains are the characters you'd expect them to be, like Ganondorf, Bowser, and Wario. You can learn pretty much everything you need to know that's happening in the story just by knowing the characters, which is kinda cheating from a writing standpoint, but then again, who doesn't know who these characters are? Hell, I could even argue that Sakurai made Subspace in a way where the characters people are less likely to be familiar with get the most development. Like, who the hell knew who Lucas was before this game dropped? Despite that, Lucas actually has an arc and a lot of his characters shine. Like, in the beginning, he starts off as a whiny little with no friends, but he meets and gets inspired by Ness's heroism, and by the end of the game is a whiny little with at least 2 friends who's more confident. We get a good idea of his personality and the person he wants to become by his interactions with Pokemon Trainer and Ness. He gets a really good payoff by his battles with Wario and Gallium, where we see a much more confident Lucas. Through Subspace, we got to know a little bit about Lucas, which is a super cool way to get me intrigued in his story and the Earthbound series. Or how about the moment where DK punches Diddy away to save his life from Bowser? It's a really dope and touching moment that actually makes me kinda sad because I grew up with and know the relationship between Diddy and DK already. There's no establishing or build up, just using the characters as we know them. However, there was one character and story arc that stole the show, and it's Ancient Minister. The Ancient Minister being an entirely new character made for Smash was a great choice, because you have no idea who or what he is or what he wants. All we know is when we first see him, he drops the bombs off and flies away. But whenever he drops off the bombs, you can just feel something is off. The way he nods at the robs before every detonation is very mournful, as if he feels sorry for his actions, making you question if he's really one of the villains in this story. I mean, even when you're chasing him with Mario's group, he's never really that aggressive. He really only fights back if someone else throws the first punch. And it looks like he's kinda just following orders. This all builds up to when the Ancient Minister is ordered by Ganon to detonate several bombs in one location, killing several Robs. The Minister has had enough and turns against Ganon to try and save them, but Ganon's power over the Robs is too much, and thus they all turn on the Minister, leaving the Minister to burn while DK's group tries to stop the Rob. As a kid, this scene had me tearing up over this blank slate of a character. I just wanted to know, who the heck is this thing and why does he care so much about the Robs? And then it happens. Oh my god, he's a Rob. Which after this reveal I said, what the f is a Rob? Rob is actually a toy from this game Gyromite. He's really not even a video game character. With that said, Subspace really got me to care about Rob the Robot, a character at one point I thought they completely made up. So if someone tries to say Subspace has a bad story, they're just wrong. You could say it's not a focused story, but I just feel like the individual character moments and groups come together to tell a story that is truly something special. I know I just went on about how great Subspace is if you watch it as a movie, but to be fair, I also got to talk about some of the downsides of experiencing it that way. A lot of the context is shown through gameplay progression, so it can be jumpy at times. Most jarring is towards the end, because there are some crazy cuts that are made without the gameplay. Like without the gameplay, the ending is super rushed. They show up to fight Taboo and then it's over. Also, there's really no explanation for what Taboo is, so I guess that's a knock. So if I was reviewing this like a movie, I would say the ending kind of falls apart. So I talked about the good and the bad of Subspace as a story, but I saved the best for last. The real reason you should experience Subspace as a movie, regardless of if the story was good or not, I think Subspace is a great cinematic experience for the hype moments. I don't care what anyone says. If something is cool enough, nothing else matters. Like, okay, maybe the ending is rushed, but who cares? We got to see Fox reflect a beam from Rayquaza, but the setting makes no sense. Don't care. Where else are you going to see Meta Knight and Marth squabble, then link up with Ike to make a swordsman trio? But the story sucks. No, you suck if you can't appreciate all the Nintendo ships riding out for one big final assault on Ganon and Bowser. I could go on and on about these elite moments, like come on, Sonic coming in at the very end is one of the coolest moments in fiction and no one can convince me otherwise. So in the end, Subspace may not make sense, but damn it, it's got passion and heart with some cool moments, and that's more than enough to make it a fine cinematic experience. Later. But yeah, that's gonna do it for today, slackers. Go ahead and like and do all that other stuff people always tell you to do, and I'll see you next time. Later.